Hi everyone and welcome back. Today is day 15 of the countdown to Christmas story time. I have two more stories for you that are based on German folklore. I hope you will enjoy them. Relax, have a cup of tea, and like I said, enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the third day of the 25 days of Christmas Read Aloud on my channel. Today is December 15th, and today I have two more stories for you that are based on German folklore. I could not find a whole lot of information on these stories, to be honest. I'm going to trust that they are really based on German folklore. I am not personally familiar with them. I both read them for the first time this year, and yeah, I have to trust the internet and what it tells me. So, the first story, The Christmas Apple by Ruth Sawyer. Once upon a time in Germany there lived a little clockmaker named Hermann Joseph. He lived in one little room furnished with a bench for his work and his tools, a chest for his wood, a cupboard for his dishes, and a trundle bed that slid under his workbench. Other than that there was only a stool, except for the clocks, that is. There were hundreds of clocks. Big clocks and little clocks, clocks with wood faces and clocks with porcelain faces. There were shelf clocks, grandfather clocks, and cuckoo clocks. Clocks with chimes and clocks without chimes. Everywhere you looked there were clocks. There was a little window in the front of Hermann's shop with a shelf on it, and there Hermann put his best clocks, so that everyone passing by could look at them and admire them, and anyone in the city who needed a clock always came to see Hermann Joseph. He was the best clockmaker around. Now, I said Hermann was a little clockmaker, and he was little because his back was bent and his legs were crooked. That made him very short and funny to look at, but there was no kinder face in the whole city. The children loved Hermann. Whenever a toy was broken, or a doll had lost an arm, a leg, or an eye, the children would bring it straight to Hermann's shop. And Hermann would always stop whatever he was doing and fix the children's toys for free. Now, there was a custom in those days for those who lived in the city to bring gifts to the great cathedral on Christmas Eve and lay them before the statue of Mary and the baby Jesus. In fact, people saved up their money all through the year so they could bring something wonderful to baby Jesus on Christmas Eve. And there was a legend in the city that when a gift was brought that pleased the baby Jesus more than any other, he would actually reach out down from Mary's arms and take it. Of course, that was only a legend. Old Mr. Graf, the oldest man in the city, could not remember that it had ever happened, and most people laughed at the idea. But the children liked to talk about it, and poets wrote beautiful verses about it. And sometimes, when a very rich gift was brought to the statue, the people would whisper, "Maybe now we'll get to see the miracle. Maybe baby Jesus will reach out and take the gift." But it never happened. Everyone went to the cathedral on Christmas Eve, even those who had no gifts to bring to the Holy Child. They, of course, went to see what gifts the others had brought, as well as to sing the Christmas carols and watch the candles burning. And the little clockmaker, Hermann Joseph, was one of those people. He never brought a gift, even though sometimes people would stop him and ask him why he didn't have a gift to give. Even the bishop once asked him, "Poorer people than you bring gifts, Hermann Joseph. Where's your gift?" And Hermann answered to him, "You wait, your Excellency. Some day you will see it. I too will bring a gift to the Holy Child." Actually, the truth was that the little clockmaker was so busy giving away what he had to others in need all year long that he never had anything left at Christmas time to offer. But he did have a great idea, which he spent every spare minute working on. No one knew about it except Trude, the neighbor's daughter. He had started the gift when Trude was a baby, and now she had almost grown up, and the gift still wasn't finished. Hermann Joseph's gift for the baby Jesus was to be a clock, of course, and it would be the most beautiful clock in the world. Hermann had worked on every piece of it for years, giving it all the love and attention that he could, and so every piece was just perfect. Well, this Christmas, Hermann realized that with a little extra work he could get his gift finished by Christmas Eve. So he stopped all his other work. Oh, he still fixed the children's toys when they were broken, but that's it. All of his time went to working on his special gift for the baby Jesus. The only problem that was the only problem with that was that he now had fewer clocks to sell, and his cupboards got pretty bare. In fact, many nights he had to go to bed with no supper because there was just no food in the house at all. But still, Hermann was happy because his gift clock was getting more and more beautiful every single day. He made it to look like a stable with rafters, a stall, and a manger. Baby Jesus lay in the manger with his mother Mary kneeling over him, and whenever the hour struck throughout the door, on the side visitors came. There were kings, 3 shepherds, 3 soldiers, and 3 angels. And as the hour was striking, the little figures knelt down in adoration before the sleeping baby, while the silver chimes played the Magnificent. You see, said the clockmaker to Trude, it's not just on Sunday and holidays that we should remember to worship Jesus and bring him gifts, but every hour of the day. Every day. Well, the day finally came when Hermann finished his clock, and he was so proud of it that he put it on the shelf in front of the window. And all day long the crowds gathered outside to see the masterpiece, and they wondered if this would be his offering to the baby Jesus on Christmas Eve. And each and every day until Christmas Eve the crowds came. And then finally it was the day before Christmas, and Hermann made sure that his clock was perfectly working. Then he cleaned up his little shop and brushed his clothes. When the blind beggar came by his door, Hermann wished him a Merry Christmas and gave him all but his last penny. The last penny he would spend for a big, juicy Christmas apple to eat with a crust of bread for his Christmas dinner the next day. But as he was putting it into the cupboard, Trude came in crying. "What's the matter?" he asked. "It's father," she said. "He's been hurt, and all the money that we saved for the tree and for the children's gifts has gone for the doctor, and the children are all excited about Christmas and presents, and we don't know what to do." Hermann smiled. "Don't worry, Trude. I will sell a clock for you. Someone must need a clock. And then we'll have plenty of money for a tree and gifts for the children. So go home, sing and have fun with the children, and I will be along soon." Hermann picked out his best clock and went all over the city trying to sell it, but no one seemed to need one. He shouted on the street corner, but no one stopped. Finally he got up all his courage and went to see mean old Mr. Graf himself. Mr. Graf said that he needed to buy a clock, but not that one. He would only buy the Christmas clock, the one in Hermann's window, the one Hermann had made as a gift for the baby Jesus, and he would pay Hermann $1,000 for it. Hermann screamed, "But that's impossible! You can't buy that one." "Nothing is impossible," shouted old Mr. Graf. "Do you want to make those children happy or not? Now you go home and get it ready. I'll send someone over to pick it up in 1 hour." Well, poor Hermann cried all the way home, but then as he passed Trude's house he heard the children singing and happy, and it made him feel good that he could help them. And sure enough, in 1 hour Mr. Graf's servant was there to pick up the special clock, the gift clock. But Hermann would not take the $1,000. He only took 100 of it, which he gave to Trude right away, and then he trudged quietly back to his shop. As he opened the door to his shop, the bells began to ring in the great cathedral, and suddenly the streets were filled with people running every which way, holding tight to their gifts for the baby Jesus. "Well, I've gone empty-handed before," said Hermann. "I guess I can go empty-handed again. At least the children are happy." And as he pulled his coat on and turned to leave for the cathedral, Hermann noticed the Christmas apple in his cupboard, and a little smile came to his lips. His eyes lit up, and he thought to himself, "It is all I have, my dinner for 2 days. I will carry that to the baby Jesus. It's better than going empty-handed after all." Well, the great cathedral was so peaceful and beautiful as Hermann entered it. There were thousands of candles burning and the smell of Christmas greens. The altar area was full of gifts all around the statue of the baby Jesus and his mother Mary. The gifts looked richer and more precious than ever before. Gold, silk, silver, and paintings. Even the king himself had brought his own crown and scepter to lay before the Holy Child. And after seeing all the precious gifts, the little clockmaker walked slowly down the long, dimly lit aisle, holding tightly to his Christmas apple. When the people saw him, he could hear the whispers. "Shame on Hermann Josef," they said. "He has so many clocks, and he is too cheap to bring even one of them to baby Jesus. Shame on Hermann Josef." But Hermann stumbled on, his head hanging low and his hands groping the way. It seemed like forever before he reached the stairs up to the altar. But finally he made it. There were 7 steps to climb, and he wondered if he could make it. 1, 2, 3, and then he stumbled and almost fell. 4, 5, 6. He was almost there, only one more. And suddenly the whispers died away, and in its place rose a murmur of wonder and awe. All over the cathedral people began shouting, "It's a miracle! It's a miracle!" And almost as one the people knelt down as the bishop raised his hands in prayer. And the little clockmaker stumbled to the last step, looked up, and through his tear-filled eyes he saw the baby Jesus leaning out towards him, with his hands outstretched to take old Hermann Josef's gift, the Christmas apple. The second story for today was written down by Frances Jenkins Olcott, a French author, and it's based on German folklore. Once again, a story I was not familiar with, but hey. The Christmas Fairy of Strasbourg. Once, long ago, there lived near the ancient city of Strasbourg on the river Rhine a young and handsome count whose name was Otto. As the years flew by, he remained unwed and never so much as cast a glance at the fair maidens of the country round. For this reason people began to call him Stoneheart. It chanced that Count Otto on one Christmas Eve ordered that the great hunt should take place in the forest surrounding his castle. He and his guests and his many retainers rode forth, and the chase became more and more exciting. It led through thickets and over pathless tracts of forest, until at length Count Otto found himself separated from his companions. He rode on by himself until he came to a spring of clear bubbling water, known to people around as the Fairy Well. Here Count Otto dismounted. He bent over the spring and began to lave his hands in the sparkling tide, but to his wonder he found that though the weather was cold and frosty, the water was warm and delightfully caressing. He felt a glow of joy pass through his veins, and as he plunged his hands deeper, he fancied that his right hand was grasped by another, soft and small, which gently slipped from his finger the gold ring he always wore. And lo! when he drew out his hand, the gold ring was gone. Full of wonder at this mysterious event, the Count mounted his horse and returned to his castle, resolving in his mind that the very next day he would have the Fairy Well emptied by his servants. He retired to his room, and, throwing himself just as he was upon his couch, tried to sleep, but the strangeness of the adventure kept him restless and wakeful. Suddenly he heard the hoarse baying of the watch-hounds in the courtyard, and then the creaking of the drawbridge, as though it were being lowered. Then came to his ear the patter of many small feet on the stone staircase, and next he heard indistinctly the sound of light footsteps in the chamber adjoining his own. Count Otto sprang from his couch, and as he did so, there sounded a strain of delicious music, and the door of his chamber was flung open. Hurrying into the next room, he found himself in the midst of numberless fairy beings, clad in gay and sparkling robes. They paid no heed to him, but began to dance and laugh and sing to the sound of mysterious music. In the center of the apartment stood a splendid Christmas tree, the first ever seen in that country. Instead of toys and candles, there hung on its lighted boughs diamond stars, pearl necklaces, bracelets of gold ornamented with colored jewels, aigrettes of rubies and sapphires, silken belts embroidered with oriental pearls, and daggers mounted in gold and studded with the rarest gems. The whole tree swayed, sparkled, and glittered in the radiance of its many lights. Count Otto stood speechless, gazing at all this wonder, when suddenly the fairies stopped dancing and fell back to make room for a lady of dazzling beauty, who came slowly toward him. She wore on her raven black tresses a golden diadem set with jewels. Her hair flowed down upon a robe of rosy satin and creamy velvet. She stretched out two small white hands to the Count and addressed him in sweet, alluring tones. "Dear Count Otto," she said, "I come to return your Christmas visit. I am Ernestine, the Queen of the Fairies. I bring you something you lost in the fairy well." And as she spoke she drew from her bosom a golden casket, set with diamonds, and placed it in his hands. He opened it eagerly and found within his lost gold ring. Carried away by the wonder of it all, and overcome by an irresistible impulse, the Count pressed the Fairy Ernestine to his heart, while she, holding him by the hand, drew him into the magic mazes of the dance. The mysterious music floated through the room, and the rest of the fairy company circled and whirled around the Fairy Queen and Count Otto, and then gradually dissolved into a mist of many colors, leaving the Count and his beautiful guest alone. Then the young man, forgetting all his former coldness towards the maidens of the country round about, fell on his knees before the fairy and besought her to become his bride. At last she consented, on the condition that he should never speak the word death in her presence. The next day the wedding of Count Otto and Ernestine, Queen of the Fairies, was celebrated with great pomp and magnificence, and the two continued to live happily for many years. Now it happened at a time that the Count and his fairy wife were to hunt in the forest around the castle. The horses were saddled and bridled, and standing at the door, the company waited, and the Count paced the hall in great impatience. But still the Fairy Ernestine tarried long in her chamber. At length she appeared at the door of the hall, and the Count addressed her in anger. "You have kept us waiting so long," he cried, "that you would make a good messenger to send for death." Scarcely had he spoken the forbidden and fatal word, when the fairy, uttering a wild cry, vanished from his sight. In vain Count Otto, overwhelmed with grief and remorse, searched the castle and the fairy well. No trace could he find of his beautiful lost wife, but the imprint of her delicate hand sat in the stone arch above the castle gate. Years passed, and the Fairy Ernestine did not return. The Count continued to grieve. Every Christmas Eve he set up a lighted tree in the room where he had first met the fairy, hoping in vain that she would return to him. Time passed, and the Count died. The castle fell into ruins. But to this day may be seen above the massive gate, deeply sunken in the stone arch, the impress of a small and delicate hand. And such, say the good folk of Strasbourg, was the origin of the Christmas tree. And that's it for today. I hope you did enjoy these two stories, and you will join me again tomorrow for my last day, day 16 of the countdown to Christmas story time, with a non-German story this time, I promise. Okay, guys, bye bye.